Hey everyone, Connor here from Chills and Thrills podcast. And just a little message before we get going on this episode. This will be Chris's last episode. So a huge thank you to him and everything that he has brought to this podcast. Even though that I have never met him, he lives in Florida and I'm here in Wisconsin, but over these 100 episodes, he has been amazing. We've had amazing banter and conversations going back and forth over these films. But he is no longer able to do the podcast. He is taking his life and career and everything in another route. So I wish him the best on that. And clearly we recorded this episode a little beforehand, so he's not here right now to show his appreciation. But just know, everyone out there that listens to us, we both appreciate you very much, and with him not being here, please feel free to show him some love in the comments and on our Facebook page and everything like that. But Chris, thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you've done for the podcast, and we truly will miss you here on Chills and Thrills. But let's get on to our episode. The basis for this film has been said to have been inspired by several newspaper articles printed in the LA Times in the 1970s on a group of Khmer refugees who, after fleeing to America from the Khmer Rouge genocide in Cambodia, were suffering disturbing nightmares after which they refused to sleep. Some of the men died in their sleep soon after. Medical authorities called the phenomenon Asian death syndrome. The condition itself afflicted only men between the ages of 19 to 57 and is believed to be sudden unexplained death syndrome and or Brugada syndrome, and this would become the basis for Wes Craven's 1984 film, A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Just meet me at my porch at midnight. Oh, and meanwhile? Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. Connor here with you. As always, I am along with Chris, and today we are beginning our first episode of a brand new franchise. I'm excited to get into this franchise, and my older sister Ariel will be joining Chris and I for this first episode as we get into the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So, Ariel, how we doing today? You think you're ready for this?
I sure hope so.
Chris, how we doing?
I'm always ready.
Always. But beginning with the original Nightmare on Elm Street today from 1984, this is a film that I, again, along with the Halloweens, the Friday the 13th, the Leprechauns, all those horror movie franchises, this is one of the ones that I probably watched at too young of an age. You know, seeing these movies at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. You know, most kids around my age, you know, my friends only seen these movies when I was younger, probably because of me and coming over to mine and my parents' house. So most of these films are not appropriate for kids, but I loved them. They got me into a horror fan at a very young age. You know, I love Michael Myers. He's always been my favorite. Jason, he's a close 2. And then you got Freddy right there battling in that 3 spot. So, you know, he's one that the big 3, we call him. So I've always enjoyed it. Ariel, I know you've seen these at a very young age right along with me. So how did you like these, you know, when you were younger? And then how did you like it on your most recent rewatch?
I feel like Mom kind of forced these movies on us as kids. She was always that Halloween person. Every time we were watching a movie, it was a scary movie. And I think I was introduced to Freddy first when we went on one of those haunted hay rides as kids. And I'm pretty sure it was called Freddy's Nightmare. I don't know if you remember that, but I was just talking with Mom about that the other day. And I remember him jumping on the hayride, getting in my face and saying, "Ever play Skin the Cat?" And Mom was like, "You have to watch this movie now. You have to watch this movie." And I think ever since then, Freddy's been my favorite. Probably literally my favorite. You love Michael Myers, Jason, all that, but I think Freddy's definitely my favorite. And when I rewatched this movie, probably 3 times, I had to rewatch it 3 times because I feel like every time I watch it again, like something else comes up that I didn't see in the previous time that I watched it. And it just made me remember, like, yes, this is why he is my favorite killer. It's the dreams, it's the way he kills. I don't know. Something about it. I think it's the finger hands for me. It's the finger knives.
Chris, how you feeling?
Oh, I'm great. My earliest memories of Freddy are probably it's the same aunt and uncle's house where I feel like I saw VHS tapes of Scream and Bride of Chucky and Wes Craven's New Nightmare is definitely the earliest one I remember seeing any of. And I was so young at the time that it was terrifying to me. Like I remember the scene of the claw like coming up through the seat and things like that, and the kid, puking in the room. Those are the earliest memories that I have of Freddy in the VHS days. And then later on, it was sort of in the 1 to 2 years of Freddy versus Jason build up that I kind of familiarized myself with all of the old ones, and me and my best friend both got the DVD box set that had all of the films in it, and he was the much bigger Freddy fan. I was the bigger Jason fan, but we would binge these movies together on DVD and get all hyped for Freddy versus Jason and things like that. And even though I mean, yeah, they always were a little bit more freaky and a little bit more scary than the Jason films, but I always, he liked that Freddy cracked jokes and had more of a personality. But I mean, you got to like these movies. They've always been good. They're classics.
Yeah, I get into them. These are something I haven't watched these films in actually a long time. Like I go back to the Halloweens and Friday the 13th and some other ones quite a bit often. When I just want to when I'm sitting at home and want to throw a movie on or something. And I hadn't watched this one in so long, and I almost forgot how good it was. I mean, you can never really forget that this is like a true classic, but I forgot how like much fun it was.
Yeah, outside of Freddy versus Jason, it's been at least a solid 15 years since I'd probably watched this movie, which is crazy because I had the DVDs and I eventually sold that set when I sold a lot of my DVDs, and I never had these in the Blu-ray era.
We always had these growing up. We had like you said, the VHS box set that like the spines of it made the picture of Freddy Krueger, kind of like
Yeah.
arms extended.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We had all the classics. I blame my parents for getting me into like everything I'm into. Clearly, like my dad got me into all like the sports, like Vikings, Cubs, Lakers, all that, and he's the one who got me into surround sound because I remember, we had a big surround sound in the living room, so all the friends would want to come over and watch movies on the surround sound, Terminator and Halloween and all that. And then, we had a pool in our backyard, so our house was. We never went and stayed at friends' house. Our friends
No.
always came to stay at our house, and it was always movie and pizza night and swimming.
That's how it was for me too.
Yep. So these movies got a lot of replay in our house.
Yeah, Mom had a lot to do with that.
And she is anything to do with the Halloween holiday, she was always setting up or dressing up. And so, like anything that was a spooky movie or something, like I said, got a lot of replay value in our house.
Yeah,
Sure.
I remember doing the math and being like, if you come over Friday afternoon and stay Friday and Saturday and go home Sunday, doing the math on, we could probably watch all of them over the weekend, things like that.
I'll go ahead into some quick background on the film for A Nightmare on Elm Street. Sexual promiscuity in teenagers resulting in their eventual death, leading to the term slasher film. Critics and film historians state that the film's premise is the struggle to define the distinction between dreams and reality, manifested by the lives and dreams of the teens in the film. And later, critics praised the film's ability to transgress the boundaries between the imaginary and real, toying with the audience's perceptions. So this film pretty much, for a horror film, it got pretty good review. Not usually horror films back in the day, they weren't big with critics, but this actually got some praise, which is nice to see.
Yeah, I think it plays out a little bit more like a dark fantasy, and I think there's a bit more kind of a visual creativity and inventiveness with the narrative and the concept, that it doesn't just feel like a phoned in killer stabbing and murdering people, which were a bit of a dime a dozen. It's kind of a bit more of a unique spin on the idea. In a lot of ways you can argue that in a traditional sense it's not really a slasher movie because of that. In the usual view of it, it's a different kind of 80s horror, and so I think maybe it got a little bit more respect and credit for being a different style of horror movie back then.
A Nightmare on Elm Street is a 1984 American supernatural slasher film written and directed by Wes Craven and produced by Robert Shea. It is the first installment in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and stars Heather Langenkamp, John Saxon, Renee Blakely, Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, and Johnny Depp in his film debut. The film was released on November 9th, 1984 in limited theaters until its nationwide theatrical release on November 16th, 1984. The film received critical acclaim upon its release and has since been considered to be one of the greatest horror films ever made. The film spawned a franchise consisting of 6 sequels, a television series, a crossover with Friday the 13th, various other merchandise, and a remake with the same name. Along with Stunts, Polyester, and Alone in the Dark, it was one of the first films produced by New Line Cinema, who by that point mostly distributed films, leading the company to become a more successful mini-major film studio and earned it the nickname The House That Freddy Built. This film is credited with carrying on many tropes found in low-budget horror films in the 70s and 80s, originating in John Carpenter's 1978 horror film Halloween, including the morality play that revolves around. I also don't think that they were used to a serial killer or a killer in a slasher film that was quippy, that he's kind of talking smack to his victims. I don't think they were used to that in the early 80s.
Yeah, it's a whole different energy,
All right, well, why don't we get into a trailer for the film? We'll get into a plot synopsis, and then we'll come back and we'll get into some numbers, some fun facts, and we'll have Ariel lead us on her favorite character of the film once we get to it.
Sounds good.
All right.
The kids of Elm Street don't know it yet, but something is coming to get them.
There's something out there, isn't there?
We just see cuts happen.
What did that, Lieutenant?
I don't know. Tina! What's the coroner got to say?
He's in the jar and puking since he saw it.
They're gonna kill me for sure.
Did you do it?
There was somebody else there.
He was locked in a room with a girl who went in alive and came out in a rubber bag.
No one knows where it came from or who it will visit next.
Nancy? There's something wrong with you. You're imagining things.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Do you believe in the boogeyman?
No.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
No!
She's the only one who can stop it. If she fails,
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
no one will survive. From Wes Craven, director of The Hills Have Eyes and Last House on the Left. A new masterpiece in fantasy terror. Nightmare on Elm Street.
Teenager Tina Gray awakens from a terrifying nightmare in which a disfigured man wearing a bladed glove attacks her in a boiler room. Her mother points out the mysterious slashes on her nightgown. Tina's best friend Nancy Thompson and Nancy's boyfriend Glenn Lance reveal that they had nightmares about the same disfigured man. During a sleepover at Tina's house, Tina's boyfriend Rod Lane arrives and they have sex. When Tina falls asleep, she dreams of the disfigured man who attacks her in real life. Rod sees her fatally slashed by an unseen force, forcing him to flee. Nancy and Glenn find Tina bloodied and dead. Nancy's policeman father, Don Thompson, arrests Rod despite his pleas of innocence. At school, Nancy falls asleep in class and dreams that the man chases her to the boiler room. She deliberately burns her arm on a pipe, which startles her awake in class, and notices a burn mark on her arm. Nancy visits Rod at the police station, where he describes Tina's death along with his own recent nightmares about the same man. At home, Nancy falls asleep in the bathtub and is nearly drowned by the man. She then relies on caffeine to stay awake and invites Glenn to watch over her as she sleeps. In her dream, she sees the man preparing to kill Rod in his cell, but he turns his attention toward her. Nancy wakes up when her alarm clock goes off. The man kills Rod, staging it as a suicide. At his funeral, Nancy's parents become worried when she describes her dreams. Her mother, Marge, takes her to a sleep disorder clinic where, in a dream, Nancy grabs the man's fedora with the name Fred Krueger written in it and pulls it into the real world. After barricading the house, Marge explains that Krueger was an insane child murderer who killed 20 children but was released on a technicality. He was then burned alive by the victims' parents, who sought vigilante justice. Now a vengeful ghost, Krueger is killing Nancy and her friends out of revenge and to satiate his psychopathic needs. Glenn falls asleep and is killed by Krueger. Now alone, Nancy asks her father, who is across the street investigating Glenn's death, to break into the house in 20 minutes. She rigs booby traps around the house and grabs Krueger out of her dream and into the real world. The booby traps allow her to light him on fire and lock him in the basement. The police arrive to find that Krueger has escaped from the basement. Nancy and Don find a burning Krueger smothering Marge in her bedroom. After Don extinguishes the fire, Krueger and Marge vanish into the bed before Krueger rises behind Nancy. Realizing that Krueger is fueled by his victim's fear, she calmly turns her back to him and Krueger evaporates. Nancy steps outside into a foggy morning, where all her friends and her mother are still alive. She gets into Glenn's convertible to go to school when the top suddenly comes down, colored in green and red stripes, and locks them in as the car speeds down the street. While Marge waves them goodbye on the doorstep, 3 girls in white dresses playing jump rope chant Krueger's nursery rhyme as Marge is grabbed by Krueger and pulled through the front door window. Alright, how about we hop into some numbers? So the original Nightmare on Elm Street had a budget of $1.8 million in 1984, and it grossed $25 million in the US and Canada with a total of $57 million worldwide, which Chris has our inflation numbers.
Yeah, so roughly that would be the equivalent of spending about 5.46 million, about 5.5 million, and having a global box office return of about 173 million. So that's a massive return on investment there.
Yeah.
Times, it multiplied its budget by 30, 35.
Yeah, you literally have to find something like, I don't know, the first Insidious movie to find those kind of like micro budget that killed over 100 million at the box office or something to that effect.
Well, this film killed the numbers all around. It has a 95% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes with an average rating of 7.8 out of 10, a 7.4 out of 10 rating on IMDb, a 3.7 out of 5 rating on Letterboxd. 87% of Google users liked this film, so everything there says that this film was successful.
Yeah, Wes Craven's always gotten a little bit more respect as kind of a filmmaker, so to speak, than a lot of the horror slasher directors. And like I said, this concept is just a lot. Nowadays the whole dream thing has been done from Inception to wherever, but you have to think about how novel this idea was in 1984. It was a very, very inventive concept. So, you get a lot of style points and bonus points for originality, and in the way that the Halloween and Friday the 13th movies, the early entries are very the late 70s, early 80s films have a kind of a basic kind of grounded vibe to them. But then by the time you get to something like Jason Lives, they're dropping in Alice in Chains songs and things like that. And in hindsight, people say like, oh, like that's when horror movies got like infused with the MTV generation. And this is a horror movie that feels like it kind of like ushered in a lot of that era. Like, there's like synthesizers in the track for the score, and the teens just seem to have this kind of different. There's like there's more attitude going on. It's just a different kind of vibe than when you watch something like Halloween or Friday the 13th, the first one of those. This is so much more of that like late 80s kind of stylish vibe to it, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. These are fun films, I have fun with them, and I got a couple more numbers for you here with being a slasher film, it doesn't have the kill count you would think it does, but it being the first film, it kind of takes its time and whatnot, but there's a kill count of 4 in this film, averaging to 1 death every about 22 and a half minutes. And then Freddy Krueger is on screen for just under 7 minutes, or about 8% of the film.
Yeah. I continue to rest my case that it's a different kind of vibe.
All right, how about I pop off some fun facts for you? There were so many for this film that I chose a couple, so I don't have too many for you here, but I'll run through those. This film was inspired by several newspaper articles printed in the Los Angeles Times in the 1970s about refugees who, after fleeing to the United States because of war and genocide in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, suffered disturbing nightmares and refused to sleep. Some of the men died in their sleep soon after, and medical authorities called the phenomenon Asian death syndrome. So it's cool to see that this was actually based off of something that had actually happened. The idea came from real life.
Yeah, that's interesting. They didn't really have subtle, politically correct names for things back then, did they? Just called it Asian death syndrome. That's kind of wild. 100 years ago, we called it the Spanish flu, but you couldn't call it the Chinese virus a few years ago.
This film's villain, Freddy Krueger, is drawn from Craven's early life. One night, a young Craven saw an elderly man walking on the side path outside the window of his home. The man stopped to glance and startled Craven and walked off. This served as the inspiration for Freddy Krueger. Hey, we all have nightmares.
Yeah. Without getting too off topic here, have either of you ever had a Freddy nightmare?
I mean, probably.
Oh man, I had one that scarred me as a kid. He was chasing me around my grandmother's house, and then I went into my grandmother's house, and he was like throwing me through tables and stuff or all over the house. It was horrifying. I'll never forget that nightmare.
I know when I was younger, I used to, because I watched the Halloween films so much, I used to dream that Michael Myers was in my closet, but I can't remember having any Freddy ones.
I don't think I ever had any Michael or Jason or I don't have a ton of nightmares, but man, I had a Freddy one as a pretty young kid, and it freaked me out.
But you survived.
Oh, totally.
Right. You got out and you survived.
Yeah.
Not a lot of these kids can say that.
Yeah, that's the important part. You came out of that dream.
Exactly.
By Craven's account, his own adolescent experiences led him to the name Freddy Krueger. He had been bullied at school by a child named Fred Krueger. So that and the last one I said kind of combined together to create this horror icon.
Yeah, what a legacy. You bully a kid named Wes Craven, and then you end up getting a horror icon named after you.
I know, maybe I should have been a bully in school or something. Hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, what would your movie be called, though? What would you have called your movie?
I don't know. The Con Man.
Should have known.
Disney, Paramount, and Universal all passed on this film, which led to New Line Cinema, the fledgling and independent New Line Cinema Corporation, which had up to that point only distributed films, agreed to produce the film. During filming, New Line's distribution deal for the film fell through, and for 2 weeks it was unable to pay its cast and crew. Although New Line has gone on to make bigger and more profitable films, A Nightmare on Elm Street was its first commercial success, and the studio is often referred to as the house that Freddy built. So yeah, I don't know if you guys know like the backstory on like Robert Shea like taking out like a mortgage on his house to like fund this film, and like he spent like every penny on it, and it became this massive success. So that's kind of why they say that this is the house that Freddy built, is New Line Cinema.
Yeah, it's one of those like rags to riches sort of bet the farm and win kind of scenarios. I always had a little bit of an affinity for New Line Cinema when I was a kid. For whatever reason, a lot of the VHS tapes that we owned, the New Line Cinema logo was the first logo that I actively remember like noticing. Like normally you don't really like as a kid you just kind of tune out the titles before the movie starts, but I remember that logo. It's in front of The Mask and Mortal Kombat and Blade and things like that. So I remember it just standing out to me every time it was on over any other movie logos.
I like in the first one that New Line Cinema, it comes on the screen and it kind of like flashes like the black background, red letters, and it's
not the final sort of logo that they ended up having forever. It's a different sort of title.
Yeah, I like how it kind of progresses through the movies, I guess you could say. Principal photography began on June 11th, 1984, and lasted a total of 32 days in and around Los Angeles, California. The high school the protagonist attended was filmed at John Marshall High School, where many other productions such as Grease and Pretty in Pink were also filmed.
This is better than both of those movies.
I don't know. I like not so much Pretty in Pink, but I will.
But Grease.
Yes, I will play my card and say that I am a huge Grease fan.
For sure.
Yeah, I think children or youth are divided into two very distinct camps of kids that grew up on Grease and kids that didn't. And I'm definitely one of those that like Grease is like a foreign film to me. I had an older brother, so watching stuff like that when I was young was not happening.
Oh, that's it. Next week, we're doing Grease on the podcast.
I'm not watching Grease.
It's such a good movie.
I'll get sick for that episode.
Oh, somebody, I need a guest appearance.
I'll do that one.
You're on. During production, over 500 gallons of fake blood were used for special effects production in this film. It's a lot of blood.
Yeah, the Johnny Depp scene, the Johnny Depp kill scene alone, the geyser.
That is the one that I'm sure that took up about 2/3 of the blood in this film, if not more. This film ranked number 17 on Bravo's top 100 scariest movie moments that was released in 2004, which was a 5-hour program that selected cinema's scariest movie moments. In 2008, Empire ranked A Nightmare on Elm Street 162nd on their list of the 500 greatest movies of all time. And it was also selected by New York Times as one of the best 1,000 movies ever made.
I think it should have been higher on both of those first two lists. I mean, 17. Again, lots of horror classics, but dang, I would have had it probably higher than 17. And I'm not even the world's most craziest fan of this movie.
Well, I know to name some of the ones above it, I watched that documentary when it came out, and I've watched it a couple times since then. And I know like Halloween was above it, Jaws, The Exorcist, just to name a couple, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So
see, for me, I well, and maybe I'm more ranking them as like quality versus what's scarier, but like I'd put the first Nightmare over the first Texas Chainsaw for me personally, but whatever.
100%.
And then my last fun fact for you is that it took an average of about 3 hours to get Robert Englund into his complete Freddy makeup for the film. So I'm sure that by the time, 3 hours went by every day, that he was ready to portray Freddy with a little bit of attitude and get the hell out of a chair and stand up and run around a little bit. I know that he was quoted saying that sometimes in the chair, like he would fall asleep and kind of wait for them to finish the prosthetics on his face. So that's like a fun little behind the scenes like statement from him.
Yeah, I'd be ready to murder teenagers after getting makeup for 3 hours.
Every day.
Well, yeah, especially when you really, like Connor said before, you're only getting 8 minutes of screen time. So how many times did you have to get your makeup done for 8 minutes of screen time?
Yeah, you wonder how many days he was actually filming. Usually these movies, they have like, sometimes they'll like film for only like a couple of weeks, like like a month or two. Like they don't have like these crazy long film times. So you wonder how many days on the production he was actually like on call to even film it all. It's interesting.
Right.
So that is all I have for you on the fun facts. Like I said, there was so many for this film that I could have sat here and rambled from what I found for an hour or two on just fun facts. Like, I always try to get some quick numbers, but the behind the scenes for this movie were endless with information.
Yeah, well documented for sure.
Have either of you, Ariel, you might not have, but Chris, have you seen the documentary for the entire franchise on this?
I have not. I have not.
Me neither.
When I had the DVD box set, I combed over every little thing that was on that DVD. So those bonus features and documentaries for every specific film and whatnot, I watched all of those back in the day, and the audio commentaries and things like that. But that sort of huge, I think it's called Never Sleep Again, that epic documentary I have not watched.
Yes, it is Never Sleep Again, and then it's like the Elm Street Legacy. It's about 4 hours long, and it's actually pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it's the same kind of group or company that did the Crystal Lake Memories documentary for the Friday the 13th franchise, I'm pretty sure. So I'm sure it's just as thorough and impressive as that documentary was.
Yeah, if you're somebody that likes these films or is a big fan, that's something, you can take at an hour at a time, or, like as they go through the movies, like, oh, I watched the first two today, the next two in a couple days. It explains a lot about the movies and goes into pretty good depth.
I'm a big fan of the first three.
Well, then you can watch an hour of the documentary and then sit through it. Ariel, that's something you would probably want to watch. Like I bet the kids would, Gracie and Kaylee, I bet they would get into that big time, watching like how all the special effects and stuff are made. I think they would like that.
Oh yeah, the kids are creeps. They love all that creepy stuff.
Yep. All right. Well, since we're done with numbers, some fun facts. Ariel, why don't you go ahead and give us your favorite character of the original Nightmare on Elm Street?
All right. Well, I picked Nancy as my favorite character. I feel like at the beginning of the movie, she was this innocent teenager living life. But behind everything, she was having these nightmares that she wasn't telling everybody about, while all her friends were having the same nightmares. And she became this innocent teenager, but then as the movie progressed, she just came like this badass who was trying to fight Freddy off. And then she started investigating things that happened in her past, and she found Freddy's glove in her basement and confronted her mom about it. And that, I feel like that's when I really got into her character, because she just started popping off stuff about Freddy, and she was finding ways to beat him so everybody stopped dying. I think it was when Glenn died that she really got into beating him and getting him out of her life. And I remember she was asleep. She had her sleep study, and she pulled his hat out of her dream. And it like made everything real to her, that he wasn't just in her dream, that he was trying to come into her real life. And she realized that when she was dreaming, all of her dreams and the fear was giving him power. So she was trying to stop dreaming and stop feeding him the power that he needed to come after everybody. So she just became like this badass teenager in this film. I don't know. She was, and every movie that she was in after this, she was still my favorite. She just became the dream warrior for him.
Yeah, Nancy was my favorite character as well, and I'll just say I prefer Nancy to Alice 100%. But I love in this movie the way that it sets her up, where initially the movie's kind of positioned as if Tina is going to be your protagonist,
Yeah.
and Nancy is sort of the. At first, she seems like maybe she's like the joking, the kind of humorous best friend kind of a character, who's kind of just going to be like the foil to the more dramatic and serious main character of Tina. And then 16 17 movies minutes in, they kind of they flip that, which is really cool. And I noticed it's very much what happens in the original Psycho, and Tina's hair color and hair look aren't so different from the way Janet Leigh looked in the original Psycho. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I always love it when a horror movie does kind of like the switch, where you kind of are setting up one main character and then you switch to another. And yeah, Nancy's the OG, and I love how resourceful she gets, and her overall personality is just it's nice. And I think there's something about this movie, like I'm not trying to put too much weight on it, but a lot of interesting things that seem to happen is, I think in when kids start to get high school age, there's a lot of her kind of seeing the faults in her mother and her dad a little bit in this movie. And I think it's kind of I think it speaks to when kids reach kind of high school age and they start to become closer to adults themselves, their parents stop becoming the sort of the image of just their parents and their authority figures, and you start to see maybe more of the flaws or things you dislike in your parents as humans. It's not just mom, it's, oh, my mom's like kind of an alcoholic and kind of lied to me about stuff that I have had as a kid. And I think that's something that for the teenage and younger audience, movies like this have an appeal when they do things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, damn, I don't even have to say anything. No. I chose Nancy as well. We're all three in agreement here. And I'll be short on it. I like her transformation, like Ariel and like both of you said, that she kind of starts off as like just one of, like, she seems like a side character. She's one of the friends. She kind of keeps to herself. And then by the end, like, she realizes that she's, if she doesn't fight back or at least try to do something, like, she's going to end up dead like the rest of her friends. And she sets up the Home Alone house for A Nightmare on Elm Street and booby traps it. And Freddy comes knocking, and she kind of tears him up a little bit. He gets beat up. And I just like the transformation where she goes from like, she seems kind of like a shy girl, but besides with her friends, like, she kind of keeps to herself, but then she becomes, like you said, this all out badass and kind of handles her business. So that's why she was my favorite in the film. Chris, what did you get for a favorite score or soundtrack from the film?
Yeah, I went with a track. Again, insanely tempting to just say the main title because it's so iconic, the sort of main nightmare theme. It's so iconic and epic. But to go with a track that wasn't that, I went with the one called Dream Attack. And one thing I liked about this score a lot is how kind of like heavy on the synthesizers it is, and it has this sort of, I don't know if electronic is the word. I'm not the expert of describing exactly the instrumentation of music, but it doesn't feel like a traditional sort of orchestral score. It feels like it's very like there's a lot of synthesizers or things like that going on, and it's just a different energy. So tracks like Dream Attack really kind of jumped out at me.
Absolutely. There's this whole soundtrack is kind of fun. I mean, there's you get the little girls that are jump roping and singing the song, and I ended up going with one called Blood Fountain, and I just like the like high intensity sound of it, and how it kind of like, and I always tend to choose one that like encompasses a scene very well, like how like I always try to think of like what would this scene be without that music, like how would it have as much of an impact, or like how much different would I look at it? So I always try to find something, or like find a piece of music that's like powerful in the film. So when the blood like shoots back up out of the bed and that like soundtrack kicks in, it like I just find it to be like a very powerful and like just abrupt start to the music, and I like the soundtrack a lot.
I think my favorite soundtrack is just the original from the movie. I like when they get in the beginning when all the kids are getting off the bus and they're singing 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, and the girls are jump roping off to the side. I think that's just my favorite.
Like
it's in all of the movies. That's my favorite.
1, 2, Fred's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. 5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8, gonna stay up late. 9, 10, never sleep.
The little dun 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 dun.
Yeah, sing the Freddy Krueger song, and that's my favorite every single movie.
It sounded just like that in the movie, Connor.
I knew it did. I knew exactly why you were laughing, and I was going to say, shut up.
Those little girls always creeped me out.
But they're in every movie. They're jump roping, and the song comes on.
Yeah,
1, 2.
Yeah.
You want me to keep going? I'll sing for you guys.
No, we'll be all right. We'll be all right.
All right, I'll go first on this one. My favorite quote in the film was actually it was kind of like a little Freddy quip, and there were more serious ones and like better lines in the film, but when she's on the phone and she's trying to call Glenn and he just goes, "I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy," and like sticks his tongue like, or like his like mouth becomes the bottom of the phone, and like he like sticks his tongue, like tries to stick his tongue in her mouth. That I almost laughed out loud on my most recent rewatch. Like when you were younger, that's kind of creepy and gross, but like as an adult, it's like they really put that in this movie, like as I don't know if they did it for laughs or like a little jump scare or to gross people out, but that all in all put together, that became my favorite quote in the film because it gave me a good laugh.
But it was like a really quiet quote. Like it wasn't like super loud. Like you really had to listen. Because she's talking on the phone. I remember that scene. She's talking on the phone, or she's trying to. But when he says that, it's not to where her tone was when she was speaking. It's like an undertone kind of. So you gotta like listen to it.
Yeah, and the sort of Freddy Krueger quips, the sort of Kruegerisms thing, it kind of wasn't really popularized here in this first one. It kind of becomes a bit of a thing later where they were actively trying to kind of manufacture cool, quippy things for him to say. In this one, I think they were just throwing him some interesting dialogue. One thing I do always love about about that scene is I think in the behind the scenes, somebody, I don't know if it was Wes Craven or if it was someone else, who talks about how, we spent all this money and all this blood to create that blood geyser. And when people in the audience see it, they go, ooh, oh. He says, and then we spent, $10 on this rubber tongue that sticks out of the phone, and every time it happens in the movie, the whole audience screams, and you get a much bigger reaction. They were lamenting that like such a cheap trick got such a big reaction compared to the big, rotating room upside down contraption that they did for the blood geyser.
Absolutely. I'm glad we can all appreciate it. I mean, it's such a simple thing in the movie, but it became my favorite. Ariel, do you wanna go first for yours?
Sure. So my favorite quote is a little longer than just "I'm your boyfriend now." So it's at the end of the movie, and Nancy says to Freddy, she says to him, "I know your secret now. This is just a dream. You are not alive. This whole thing is a dream." And I love this quote when she says this to him because he's actually rising out of her mom's bed, like after he smothered her. And Freddy just looks defeated. Just the look on his face when he comes up behind her, when she says this to him, the look of defeat is written all over his face. And Nancy knows that she won and that she beat him. And you can just see it. That was my favorite quote. I like winning, fights, anything, arguments. And when she said this to him, she knew that she won.
Yeah, and I like that sort of realization was kind of planted a little bit in the conversations she had with Glenn earlier in the movie. So it's solid writing, at least above average for what you usually get for a 1980s slasher film. I tend to often go with jokes for my favorite lines, and there's a lot of fun lines of dialogue in this movie. So I gotta give 3 honorable mentions here, but I'll be quick. So one of them, when Nancy's deprived of sleep at one point in the movie, she looks in the mirror and she goes, "Oh God, I look 20 years old," which was always funny to me as a kid because, these teenagers that are 16, 17, 18, they would hate the idea of looking 20, and being 20 years old is still very young. I like the line early on in the movie when Tina is bickering with her boyfriend and he says, "Up yours with a twirling lawnmower," because it's like outdated slang. But I remember when my best friend, who also loved these movies, saw this movie and heard that line, that became like part of his vernacular for like the next like 5 weeks. He would say it. And so it was weird to see like, oh, this is like an old 80s phrase. And now, middle schoolers in the early 2000s are saying it all the time, which was just odd. And then there's a great line early on where Glenn's all frustrated. And he's like, it's something to the effect of, "What is she so freaked out about a dream anyway?" And then Nancy goes, "Because he's scary, all right." And I'm just like, well, if that's not an encapsulation of the whole franchise, I don't know what is, why are people so freaked out over a nightmare? Because he's scary, okay? Like, that's the whole series in a nutshell.
There was one that in the beginning that I don't know if I thought it was really funny. It gave me a little chuckle, but Rod comes up and he's like, he tackles Glenn down, and like once they get up, he's like, "So what's going on here? An orgy?" And Glenn goes, "Maybe a funeral, dickhead." And it just gave me a good laugh.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild to see Johnny Depp introduced in this movie. Like that he would go on to all of the insanely high level success that he ended up having. It's so crazy. Just even more so than seeing like a young Kevin Bacon in the first Friday the 13th. Seeing like baby Johnny Depp in this movie is just wild.
Yeah, your first movie is a killer movie, and you don't even live. And then now you're doing Pirates of the Caribbean and all this crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's insane.
I absolutely. He's one of the actors that if he's in something, I tend to be like, I may not watch it when it comes out, but it's like, hey, I probably got to check that out. See what's going on with that film. There's so many that he's been in that I've liked. There's a couple that I'm not a big fan of with him in as a remake, but like seeing him in this for sure. Like, and I mean, a lot of actors at a young age get their start in horror. It's kind of like their big first break. So it is crazy to see him in this as his like introductory film. All right, so Chris, do you want to go first on your favorite scene?
Sure, absolutely. So my favorite scene in the movie, or sequence rather, I would just call it Tina's final nightmare, and that the entire sequence is it's the first real big reveal of Freddy, and it's the first time you kind of get, the opening is a bit of a tease that does it, her opening nightmare, but her final one really kind of showcases the model and formula that these movies would operate on for the next couple of decades, and in the sense that you think you're kind of in reality, and then you just start to see things and experience things that are completely impossible, so that you're not in reality. But the way it's presented, it's not really framed that up yet, that it's, in the dream reality versus the real reality. So he's extending his arms and he cuts his own fingers off, and she rips his face off to reveal the skull underneath, and it's just this surreal, like, seeing it for the first time, when all of with this dream, before this movie, all the killers were always just in reality. There wasn't this dream versus reality thing, and this is the sequence that kind of lays out, like, we are playing by different rules here. And then to see her being stabbed and attacked and cut and murdered in the room, and you don't see Freddy, but but you kind of see, like, hey, she's being murdered in her dream, and she's being murdered, and it's killing her in real life. Like, it just, like, it's the sequence where you kind of frame up and realize exactly how this franchise operates, and it's kind of killing the person that you perceive to be the main character up to that point, which is even more shocking. So that's my favorite scene in the movie.
Absolutely. I ended up going with I don't know if kind of, I guess you could say, like, the setup to the booby trap scene, and I like the scene where Nancy kind of, like, she decides, like, all right, you know what, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm going to do something about it. And I like the whole scene of her just setting up the booby traps, where you can see her, like, putting a hole in, like, the light bulb and putting gunpowder in it, and then, like, kind of, like, hanging and, like, tying the sledgehammer up and whatnot. And then I love the sequence and, like, the scene that follows that, with, like, Freddy, like, chasing her, and, like, you see, like, Freddy hits the tripwire, and bam, the light explodes, and, like, him getting hit with the sledgehammer. Just, like, the whole, I kind of called it, like, the booby trap, like, Freddy chase scene. So I like that entire sequence of the film, which it's a little bit long. It's a little bit longer than a scene, but I like that entire sequence in the film.
Okay, well, I picked my favorite kill scene from this movie, and I picked Glenn with the waterbed. I feel like we had waterbeds as kids, so it terrified me, because one minute he's awake and the next minute Glenn is sleeping, and within 5 seconds, Freddy comes out of the bed, kills him. There's blood everywhere. It comes up on the ceiling, and then he just disappears. Glenn is gone. He disappears. And I'm pretty sure I was scared to sleep in my waterbed as a kid for a very long time after watching that part. It was just it was so real. And it happened so quickly. The scene is very short, but it happened so fast. It was like he was sleeping, and the next minute you knew he was dead. And that's when it was so real to me, how fast he killed somebody in their dreams. And you didn't even know if Glenn was dreaming. You just knew, bam, he was sleeping, and the next thing you knew, he was dead. So you didn't even know if he was dreaming about Freddy or if he was dreaming about Nancy, but you knew that as soon as he fell asleep, he died.
Yeah, the way the movie's always played with that, where it is exactly the moment that they fall asleep versus not fall asleep. It always sort of drove me crazy as a kid, because it was like, I would always try to very clearly find the line of, like, well, now it's a dream and now it's not. And they always play around with the idea of, it all seems real until something wild enough happens that you have to know it's a dream. And it's like, I guess they were sleeping for the last 5 minutes and we were just watching a whole dream sequence, or when exactly did the switch happen? And so they always played around with that a lot in these movies. And so it always throws you for a loop and keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, it was like he fell asleep, and then the next thing you knew, Freddy's jumping out of this bed, and I was like, well, gosh, he just fell asleep. How did you even know he was for sure sleeping? Well, you didn't, but you killed him. So apparently he was sleeping and he was in a dream somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and there's even huge sections of the movie where, the whole climax seems like it's occurring in the real world, but then things happen that make you think like, okay, was that just another dream within a dream almost? It's interesting how they do it.
It's like you didn't know if you were awake or if you were sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
So we got your favorite scene and favorite death in the film all in one.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. Chris, would you care to go for your favorite death?
Oh yeah, favorite pure kill. I have to double up here. It's definitely the blood geyser. It's one of the most iconic images in the entire, series. I think, when people think of the kind of what Nightmare on Elm Street brings to the table, it's the fact that you can have these wildly imaginative and inventive kills, like someone being pulled into a bed and pureed into a blood geyser. You can't get that in these other franchises.
I'll have to triple up with you. We'll be a three-peat here for our favorite kill because I ended up choosing Glenn as well. And like Ariel said, it's just so abrupt. And then with how they did the effect with like the spinning room and like having the blood all over the walls, and then you got his mom coming in and freaking out because she's like clearly doesn't understand like what's happening. Like she can see the blood, but. And then like the aftermath of like Nancy's dad asking like where the coroner is, and he's like, yeah, he's in the John Pukin ever since he's seen it. And it's just
bring a mop bucket, not a body bag.
Yeah. It's definitely probably the most iconic, but I mean, I did like Rod's as well, just like the simple like scene of him ended up being hung like by a bed sheet, like being like drugged to the wall and like hung while he's in jail. Like I thought that was kind of like terrifying.
Yeah, and it kind of instills that okay, it's a dream, and what happens to you in your dream's real, but also apparently what happens in the dream manipulates reality a little bit. That if he's strangling you in your dream, that it's also causing the sheet to strangle you in real life. It was always really wild and freaky of just where the boundaries lie and how much of an influence on reality does the dream have. So that's a good moment too.
There's also that scene too where Nancy was in school and she falls asleep at her desk and Tina's in the hallway in the body bag and she's getting drugged down the hallway with her feet in the air, but nobody's there in the dream dragging her. Like that was a really good scene too. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and Freddy wearing her face and using her voice always freaked me out as well.
Yeah.
And her kill is iconic, seeing her shirt rip open and seeing like the 4 slash marks down her chest. Like as an audience member, you don't really know what's going on. You got a couple quick glimpses of Freddy, but like to see that and have that be your opening kill of the film, it kind of sets the tone for the rest of it.
Yeah, I think where these movies are now, because for a long time the franchise was kind of in pop culture to a degree that people just knew that Nancy was the main girl of the series in a sense. But now, because we're kind of more removed, I think young people these days, or people unfamiliar with the franchise these days, only kind of know Freddy. So if you were to go back and just watch the original and show someone that doesn't know these movies, I think the surprise would be more effective again. That you wouldn't realize or think like, oh well, Nancy's the main girl. Like, I think new audiences would buy it at face value that Tina's the main character until she gets killed.
Yeah, I mean these are like the Friday the 13th. They haven't come out in theaters since 2010, and so that they've skipped almost like a whole generation. So it's like, okay, when are we going to get another Freddy Krueger movie? Like Chris and I had talked about this on the Friday the 13th that we had just done. Like, okay, this new trilogy of Halloween films came out. from Blumhouse, the Halloween, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends, and you thought, okay, like that might spark interest in a new Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street, since them are like the big three for the slasher like formula. So it's like, when do we get another one of those films?
Oh yeah, because I'm going to watch that.
Yeah, well,
They better figure it out.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think it's one of those things where you could debate the original Halloween, but I think generally the first Nightmare on Elm Street is kind of, and this is kind of like a pretentious thing to say, but I think it's respected a bit more as a unique creative film than a lot of these slasher classics are. You know, like we talked about the critical reception and things like that. I think it's sort of considered a little higher tier in quality than some of these other movies. And then the remake, I think, arguably, again, up for debate, I think the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street was probably the one that I liked the least when you compare it to Texas Chainsaw, even the Rob Zombie Halloweens and the Friday the 13th 09. I think a lot of those like were largely, you know, very well done or successful, but the Nightmare on Elm Street, it felt like very few people enjoyed that remake or were impressed by it. You know, it has its defenders, but I think a lot of people were quite let down by it. So it's like arguably the strongest of the originals got arguably the worst remake, and I think it's made them gun shy about trying to tackle it again because, you know, oh, who are you going to cast as Freddy? How are you going to do this? You're going to be how inventive are you going to be with the dreams? Are you just going to do it with a lot of cheap CGI? You know, the effect of Freddy bending through the wall over Nancy in the original is iconic and holds up. And then in the remake, they do like this crappy CGI weenie coming out of the wall thing, and it just looks horrible, and it's nowhere near as good. And it's like, well, if you're just going to do that with all of the dream sequences and effects and make something that looks dated 2 days from now, then like no one wants to see that, you know? So it's like a Nightmare remake kind of has to be more prestigious and more higher tier, and they made one that really wasn't. And so like there's all this pressure. So I think they're kind of gun shy about trying it because they know that the fans won't accept, you know, garbage.
Touche.
Absolutely. And I mean, no matter what, fans are gonna go to the theaters to see the movie. I mean, look what they did. They had no idea what the Halloween 2018 film was gonna be, and coming off of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which is one of the most disliked films in the Halloween franchise by a lot of fans, they came to this new Halloween film and it just made buku dollars. So I mean, if you do your marketing and stuff right, even if you have a mediocre Freddy film, you could probably have a box office success on your hands. So I mean, I'm waiting along with Friday the 13th. I'm waiting for this to come back into theaters as well.
Yeah, well, and I think that a new Nightmare movie would have higher potential to be interesting because not just CGI, but it opens it up to be a much more imaginative movie with what you can do with the nightmare sequences and the visuals and crazy things like that. You can get into like creatures and monsters and all kind of like nightmare demons and nightmare realms and worlds, and there's so much room to be really dark and gothic and fantastical and wild that like it's got a very high ceiling for how good it could be, but there's also a lot of room for it to be done in a way that really feels kind of cheap. And so, you know, it's like they absolutely should do it. It's like all you have to do is just make sure it's good, you know, make sure it's a standard and that you're not hiring a guy that's only directed music videos before, you know.
Well, how about we go into some final thoughts on this original 1984 and keep having our fingers crossed for another remake or reboot of the series. I suppose I'll go first on this one. This is one of the original horror films I seen when I was younger. So this, along with like the original Halloween, I didn't see the original Friday the 13th till a little later. So I seen like 2, 3, 4 stuff like that. But I seen this so young that it always holds a special place. I come back to it every so often. I was surprised that before this podcast I hadn't watched it in so long because it is one of like the original like loves for horror for me, and like it's such a classic, it's such a good film. And I mean, anybody who hasn't seen it, I mean, needs to give it a try. And 99.9% of horror fans know about this film. They've seen it, they rewatch it. And I all in all, like, this is definitely a recommend. And I mean, it's a fun film and a good time, and it's quick. It's an hour and a half long, just like you want your horror movies to be. It's a brisk hour and a half. It gets to the point, it does its job, and it's just a good film.
Yeah, I agree with that. And this is a situation where, with Friday the 13th, I think a lot of people don't pick the original as the best or their favorite. With this franchise, though, even if this one isn't, if you don't consider the original the best, almost everyone considers it top 2, top 3, without a doubt. There might be 1 or 2 that some people put above the original, but generally speaking, I would say it's probably a common trend that a lot of people consider the first one to be the best or their favorite, and it's really well handled. It's really well done, and insanely inventive for the time. Set a lot of new standards, changed a lot of the way that the genre was doing things. It's not my favorite of a lot of the big sort of horror icons and slashers, but you can't deny how awesome and unique and compelling Freddy is as a villain and a character. And these movies are they stand out from all of the other ones.
This Freddy movie was probably one of my favorites for sure. It was a good way to introduce Freddy to a younger audience or to people who love horror movies. And he's scary. A guy who is burned with knives for fingers coming at you in your dreams. Everybody dreams. Everybody has nightmares. So coming up with a movie where you're getting killed in your dream, or if you get killed in your dream, you're dying for real, that scares people. And this was the first scary movie that I ever watched with my kids, and it terrified them, which is so good. To terrify little kids with someone that could get you in your dreams is great. But also the way that the movie was made. There was only 4 kill scenes, but the kill scenes in this movie were great. They were bloody, they were gory. Like I said, it was a good way to introduce Freddy into horror lovers' lives.
Well, and then we continue next week with because of course, if you make 35 times your budget, you have to have a sequel. We gotta cash in on the money. So this film was followed by A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, which the other 2 on this podcast are not too much of a fan of, let's say.
Well, I'll say this: I've not watched any of these films in a good 15 years, and so maybe upon rewatch there'll be a little bit of a reappraisal process. Not that I'm gonna all of a sudden think it's a masterpiece, but I might have some more things to appreciate and praise about it than a lot of people do when we get back around to it. Or maybe I'll hate it even more. Who knows?
I hope not.
I'll probably dislike it more this next time that I'm going to watch it, probably for the 3rd time. I'll probably still dislike it as much as I did the first time I rewatched it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I don't mind the second one at all. We'll get to it when we get to it. But
I don't mind it.
It is coming up. It is on our next episode. We have to get to it as we're doing the entire franchise. So I will say thank you, Chris, and thank you, Ariel, for joining me. This should be a fun journey. We are going to do, spoiler, I'll spoil it for you, that I figure we'll do all 8 films, and then we will conclude the episodes with a ranking episode, ranking all these films from 9 to our favorite or our least to our favorite. So we will do all 9 Nightmare on Elm Streets and then do a ranking episode for them.
All righty.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, well, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, is next week on our next episode. But thanks, everyone, again. Thanks, anyone who's listening. And until next time.
Hey, up yours with a twirling lawnmower.